I've tried to lead by example and have him see that, a sober lifestyle is possible and it's so fun and enriching, and that, there's other ways to live, because, we can't hide them from or protect them from drugs and alcohol. They are just out there and they're going to experiment with them.
My name's Isabel and welcome to the Sober Spill. Today we are here with Ariana, Jess, Maddie, and we are talking about teenage drinking, but more than teenage drinking. We're talking about how do we talk to kids about drinking without making them feel shameful, without isolating them in that. And so we're hanging out with good hangs, moms, and people in recovery. So for the people that don't know you, who are you?
I'm Ariana Cardoso. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm a mom, and I'm a person in long-term recovery.
Go off.
I am Maddie McAvoy. I am the manager of operations in the wellness department here at Mountainside. I have almost 5 years in recovery, and I'm a mom to a 17-year-old.
Brave.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm Jessica Barone. I'm a certified addictions counselor. I have 4 children, ages 16, 15, almost 14, and 12. I'm also in long-term recovery, 7 years.
And all your kids look exactly like you.
Well, there's 2 Italian-looking ones, my older 2 with the olive skin and the dark hair, and then my younger 2 are like the fair skin blonde.
I see it pop up on my Facebook, and I'm like, that's a little Jess.
Oh, yeah.
Yummy Jess.
So like I was saying, inevitably, a lot of times teens, I always hate saying the word teens, but like teens are going to drink. Teens are going to use something like that's going to come up, especially in today's like society. It's so much more accessible, I feel like, to a certain extent. And we know that letting kids drink at home doesn't limit risk. Like a lot of times I think people believe that to be the case. Like, well, they're doing it at home, so it's safe. Like that's proven that does not decrease risk. But how would you guys feel if your kids went somewhere and they gave you a call and they were like, there's alcohol here? Like, how do you handle that?
My daughter's 19, and that hasn't come up yet. We can talk more about how I handled the situation initially, but in terms of her being at a party and needing to leave because of alcohol or being drunk, I've never had that experience with her.
For me, this happened once with my oldest, and, she gave me a heads up, like, prom night, there's a sleepover happening, there's probably going to be some stuff there, but she talked to me about it, and then she said, you know what, I'm just not going to sleep over, I'm going to go, and then you can pick me up later, because she gets homesick anyway and likes her bed. So, with her, that's probably the only experience, but she communicated that with me, and I think that the open communication was established, since she was younger. So there's that open dialogue already to where she didn't feel the need to hide it from me.
That's amazing.
I know. I don't know if it's going to work out with the rest of them. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm having flashbacks to my youth. That was not how that worked.
No.
Oh, me neither.
Yeah, my mom, I remember when I went to my first sleepover in the 5th grade, I had to call the parents of the girl I was sleeping over with, and I had to be like, are there boys there? Are there any guns in your house? Like all of these questions. It was way too much. But go ahead. What about you?
So that actual situation hasn't come up with me yet with my son. But we've certainly had conversations about it. I really like that your daughter was so willing to actually say it. I definitely, teenage boys can be a little private. They don't necessarily want to open up and talk about feelings and, really get into it with their moms. But we definitely have these conversations, and I try to approach it as often as I can. And we can get into that too, like Ariana said.
And are you open about being in recovery with your kids? Like, are they aware that you are and what you're in recovery from?
My son certainly is. He was 12 when I got sober. And I have been open with him throughout this time about my drinking. And then even later, even shared more about like substance use and like cocaine and the dangers of hard drugs,
Yeah.
So I try to be open with him, and like I've tried to lead by example and have him see that, a sober lifestyle is possible and it's so fun and enriching, and that, there's other ways to live, because, we can't hide them from or protect them from drugs and alcohol. They are just out there and they're going to experiment with them.
Yeah, 100%. I think that can be kind of divisive too, where the book that comes to mind is Beautiful Boy, where David Sheff talks about how he felt guilty sharing his drug use and his experimentation in college with his son, who then later became a methamphetamine addict. Because he's like, what if I normalize that for him? But like with what you're saying, it helps like limit shame, I think, and also let people know that if things do happen, you're someone that they can talk to about it, not necessarily like isolating them from that.
Exactly. Yeah.
What about you?
My daughter was 2 when I got sober, and I never hid it from her. I was working in the field from the time she was 3, so she was really kind of exposed to mental health and addiction in a professional way for a long time. And then as soon as she had a grasp of what it meant, I let her know that I was clean and sober. I talked more about alcohol initially and other substances like later on in her adolescence. But she always knew. It's like, this is your genetic predisposition, and these are some factors that can play into it, and you want to stay away because it's not only me, it's your dad, it's his side of the family as well. And I guess it was kind of a lot because she was only like 9 or 10 years old.
She's like, I don't know how to process this.
Like, I don't know what a diathesis is. No.
Yeah.
But she was a very smart, self-possessed young woman, and she hurt me because we have a good, very open relationship about many other things, and she's just never drank or used substances, which is a blessing, especially considering my parents' experience of me as an adolescent.
Yeah, I think about that a lot.
Yeah.
But it's also, there's always the idea that going through recovery yourself and also having the experience of being parented as like a lot of times a young addict or a young alcoholic, we're way better equipped. I say we, I have a cat, I don't have a child. But Bubbles and I are bonded in a way similar to that, I don't doubt. But being better equipped to then handle that, like how does your recovery influence the way you parent, I guess?
Well, my kids know that I'm in recovery. When I went to treatment, my oldest was 10, and I didn't know how to communicate that at all. So I think, if I remember correctly, I phrased it as mommy school, to be a better mommy for you. But I did, in a sense, start with almost like, funnily enough, like the DARE approach, right? Where it's kind of like this fear factor, once they started, what are drugs? And then it's like, well, this is what they are, and this is kind of what can happen to you. Here's a mugshot of someone who's been doing meth for 8 years, so, which I think can be effective, but not by itself. So, as they got older, kind of like what Ariana was talking about, like incorporating maybe a little bit more age appropriate. I mean, if you know your kid, you'll probably get a good sense of their comprehension level. So getting to the point where we can talk about pharmacodynamics and pharmacokinetics and how, the drugs metabolize in your system and how it impacts the brain. And we talk about neurotransmitters and, what is serotonin, and honestly talking about the appeal of drugs. Well, like, why does somebody, drink? Like, what does it do? How does it make you feel? And I'll answer honestly, sometimes it's the illusion of happiness, or, sometimes it can help people forget, or it's a numbing feeling, and that can be really helpful for someone who's struggling. And then we'll talk about the mental health. So just depending on their age level, I've certainly got a lot more in depth with them since I'm at mommy school, learning how to be a better mommy. But I think that dialogue sort of developed over time. Also, too, I want to add that I have to remember that their generation is not my generation, too. So they're having a wildly different experience, and I'm finding that, like, a lot of times mental health and sober is, like, in.
It is.
Too. Yep. So I think it was a lot different, at least when I was growing up.
Totally. And I'm glad, I think it's funny mentioning the DARE approach and then talking about going beyond that, because I have so many people. I talked to this woman in recovery about this once, and she was saying how DARE, even as like a 5th grader, it made her be like, ooh, like drugs might be kind of the thing. So if it's something so good that people are like disregarding their families and jobs and all these things, like there must be something more to this. Or I have a friend who's like, I realized it was war on drugs propaganda. It was a lie, and then I moved past it.
I still have a Dare shirt.
Yeah.
I wore it here one day. It was like a dress down day.
Yeah, I'm sure people love that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's where I wore a Newport shirt one day, and everyone was like, ah.
Oh, right,
Yeah,
yes.
it gets the people excited.
Yeah, just keep people on their toes a little bit.
But how does your experience being parented as someone who ended up experiencing like problems with alcohol and drugs, how does that influence your parenting now?
You know, as we see here at our job, like, addiction doesn't discriminate. So no matter where you come from, like, it can happen. So I was raised in a family who didn't allow us to drink in the home, really didn't condone us drinking outside of the home, and that didn't stop me. You know, I've seen friends growing up that their parents did allow them, but they didn't want to drink. So I don't really think, you know, that's a factor. I would say maybe a little bit of my upbringing, but more so my own personal recovery and experience in this field and with addiction. That's more so influenced how I approach the situation. Because without that experience and knowledge that I've gained over these past 7 years, I might have stuck with the fear factor approach, you know, like remember the person's mugshot, like don't do it or else, you know, but now I have a dialogue that I'm able to share at an age appropriate level.
I think that's smart, tailoring your approach too and moving outside of that. Because it's also, they talk about this in the big book where it's like, if our physical health is going to keep us sober, it already would have. Like if like fear doesn't keep you sober, all of these things, like, because we have that terminal uniqueness where it's always like, well, that's not going to be me, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah. What about you guys?
I don't know. I, in a way, almost think that I'm not more equipped to handle my teenager if he were to end up with a substance use issue. I think that parenting is really hard, and it's, you know, I guess it has impacted the way like I communicate. I do think that I am a much healthier communicator now than when I was, you know, still using and drinking. So both of my parents were actually in recovery. So I grew up in a dry household.
Interesting.
So they actually talked about the dangers of alcohol and substances, and that also did not affect me at all. Like, I remember being in Dare, and like you said, your friend mentioned, I thought it seemed cool. I was like, oh yeah, those are so bad. Like, I want to do that.
This is edgy.
Yeah. Like, I was drawn to it in that way. So I think maybe my parents, as I got older, stopped talking about it, and that's where I've tried to continue the conversation. To make sure that it's still happening while it's really more relevant too. You know, when they're 10, yes, it's good to have those conversations, but it's really, you know, socially becomes much more acceptable as they get older and their friends begin doing it. I mean, I even used me coming onto this podcast episode as an excuse to talk to him about it. You know, it was nice. Like, I was telling him about it and he thought it was cool. And I was like, well, this opens up the door to the drinking conversation. And we kind of just approached it again. So I think it's just an ongoing thing that I continue to work on. And I mean, yeah.
Yeah. And that's, did you, as having parents in recovery, did that make you more or less comfortable talking to them about you drinking, about you getting up to whatever?
More uncomfortable instead of comfortable. Yeah. Like, I felt more, I think I hit it a lot better. I didn't go fully off the rails. I didn't end up going to treatment. I know that my whole family was very aware of what was going on, but the only person brave enough to actually talk to me about it was one of my sisters. So they didn't really talk about it with me, and they just kind of ignored the problem. So I just kind of handled it myself. So I guess in a way I would say that, you know, I wouldn't want to do that to my child. I would want to make sure that there is always an open door for communication, and that, you know, they know that I will support them through whatever their issue may be, and to not be afraid to talk to me about it.
Yeah, and that's an awesome point. Because I would imagine growing up with parents who are sober, it can also be like, well, you could do it, why can't I? Or like, I'm different. Like, we talk about how in recovery, or when we're using feeling other from other people, but how we tend to other ourselves to a certain extent too. What about you, Ariana?
I think that my parents were always extremely loving and supportive, but they just weren't very aware about my behaviors, my mental health. I'm their first child. It was pretty brutal on them, on myself, and the whole family. And I think that I'm just more aware, like if my daughter is going through something, I get her help and I do it quickly, and teaching her how to like emotionally regulate things that would just, I'm pretty old. I'm 47. So my parents are baby boomers. Like going to therapy was not something that was done until I went, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So I think that as amazing as my parents are, I'm just more aware of what could happen and how to go about addressing it.
Yeah, I think that's an awesome point where it's because even today we still see that to a certain extent. Like I know for my parents, when I was 14 and the topic of like putting me on some sort of like antidepressant was brought up, it was like, whoa. And some like extreme stuff had to happen to get me to a point where I would be able to take them. But we also, like when we talk about parents letting their kids drink in the home, and how that doesn't limit risk, it also brings up like the idea that alcohol is, I don't know, less harmful to a certain extent. Because we see parents giving their kids like benzodiazepines, and like obviously it's situational, like every kid is different, but it's the stigma around alcohol. So many people tend to think it's more safe than anything. Like we even looked at that when they wouldn't legalize weed for forever. And it's like, I would so much rather someone be doing that than like drinking is so much more harmful objectively.
Yeah. And we weren't allowed to drink in the house. I think like maybe over 18 before you could have a sip of wine or something. But how did they not know that I was so wasted all the time on the weekends and sometimes during the week? And how did they not know? And I don't think they did. I don't think for a long time they realized what was happening. But I think, again, the awareness.
Yeah, and it's also to a certain extent, I feel like parents a lot of times they might not want to acknowledge, because it's like if my daughter is drunk all of the time, then oh my God, we have an issue way bigger than anything I know what to do with. You know what I mean? So I feel like ignorance is bliss to a certain extent sometimes too.
And they were hippies, so experimentation was part of their adolescence.
Yeah.
And they figured that I was just having a rough go.
Yeah, because their parenting is also very informed by like what they experienced. Like you just said, I had a very similar experience with my parents where my mom got like depressed in high school. So when I got very depressed, it was like, well, this is normal. She'll grow out of it. And I was like, no, girl, this is a lifestyle. This is forever.
And not that it's just normal, but also that it could require treatment.
Yes.
You might need some professional help, which they got me eventually, but that was just a whole nother, it was a nightmare. It was the 90s. Like what was available was not a lot.
And the discussion wasn't normalized around mental health and substance use. Like, I don't even think there was really a vocabulary to talk about it.
No.
It's something that I think all of us as parents now have. And I think it's super beneficial. It can't hurt at the very least.
Well, it's so much more, I was going to say popularized, but to a certain extent popularized, but it is so much more common now where I think the statistic is 1 in 3 people will either themselves struggle with substance abuse or have their life touched by it in some way, whether that be like a loved one, a friend, something. So it's not, you can't ignore it. Like realistically, it is so in your face. It is so hard to ignore at this point, which I think has opened up a dialogue about it. And we see a lot of like younger people coming in too, which may not have been the case like 10 years ago. Now it's so much more common. But with your kids, I mean, have any of them ever expressed concerns about like friends using or anything? Like, have their lives been touched in this way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. All of us.
Yeah.
The statistic was right.
Yeah.
There was something to it.
Totally.
It was a test.
Yeah.
One of my daughter's really close high school friends they were in school together in middle school. And towards the end of middle school, beginning of high school, and they went to different high schools, this friend started smoking a lot of weed and drinking. And my daughter was just not about it and didn't want to be around it. And again, that's a huge blessing. Like it could have worked out so many different ways. But the 3 best friends, 2 of them like abstained completely. And then this other girl still, I think to this day, smokes and drinks quite a bit. And she was allowed to drink in her parents' house, actually, come to think of it. They're always drinking. Like people that always were entertaining and hosting and had a lot of alcohol all the time.
I think that actually increases the chance that someone will develop
Totally.
Yeah.
a problem with substance use. Like not just like limit, but
No, yeah, definitely it increases someone's proclivity to addiction if they have open access to it. But that's also where my belief that like we talked about, it doesn't discriminate. Like alcoholism is, you're going to have it. If you got it, you got it. Like trauma or circumstances, like having someone, like having constant access, it creates a very like fertile ground for it to grow.
Right.
But it's going to happen if it's going to happen. Unfortunately, like having, like you said, not being able to drink in the house. Like I think a lot of us probably, your parents weren't letting you drink in the house.
No.
Like, yeah, it wasn't like a common thing. But yeah, it definitely, and they've talked about this too, where your brain, because it doesn't, what does it finish developing? 25?
About
26.
26. I knew someone here.
it changes for
Boys.
boys and girls. Yeah.
Boys are 26, so girls are like
I bet it
24,
is.
25.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were at a thing in the city recently for Mountainside where there was a panel and a doctor. I can't remember where he was from, but he was speaking on this where he's like, people are going to drink, like people are going to use drugs. I always implore them to wait until you're 25 because then you can make more informed decisions about it. Is that like a dialogue you have with your kids? Is that something that you talk to them about?
I've talked to them about brain development and what the frontal cortex is and how it's largely responsible for decision making, kind of like how I talk about what alcohol does to the brain. But I think my goal right now as a parent, because like you said, either they're going to do it or they're not, they have it or they don't.
Yeah.
My goal is to provide them with enough knowledge and education so that if it does happen, they are at least armed with that, so whether it's susceptibility because there's a genetic component because of my family, or one day they're influenced by their friends because their brain isn't fully developed and they feel like in adolescence all eyes are on me and I have to do this, and they develop through exposure. I just hope that they're armed with enough knowledge that they know where to go, what's happening in the brain and body, and they're not like me where I was like, this is some moral deficit, it's not enough willpower, this is why I'm struggling. Like I didn't have that mental health knowledge piece. Like I thought it was, I just need to try harder, so however, if and when they do end up struggling with substance use, I want to arm them with knowledge and hopefully have that open dialogue to where they feel comfortable enough coming to me. God forbid there's a rock bottom,
Yeah.
No, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, limiting, I like how you said, the moral deficit, letting them know that just because they struggle with this doesn't mean they're bad.
Right. And
Like,
you
you're not
mentioned like the
inherently
friends, right? Have any of their friends, like they'll tell me so-and-so is doing this and like it's the gossip and the talk of the town. It's like, well, what's going on in their life right now?
Yeah.
They used to not do that. Why do you think their mom and dad are actually going through a divorce? Oh, okay. Well, does this make a little more sense? Or I've noticed she's super worried about what other people think about her. So it's that non-judgmental approach that hopefully they see I'm giving their friend and will not be judgy if they should struggle with something too,
Yeah. Amazing.
Yep, I know. But surprise, they're going to do whatever they're going to do. Like, we don't have control over our kids. And I think we know that, but it's like, it's scary, at least for me.
Oh, yeah. As alcoholics, I love control. I yearn for it. I dream of it. Like, I can't even imagine. Yeah.
Like, what do you mean they're making their own choices?
Yeah, I'm like, go here. Do this.
Yes.
I want it to be like a Sims game. Sit down, play piano for 3 hours. Don't
Be
leave
good at it.
Yeah, be good at it. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Pat McCarthy here. Mountainside's Brighter Future Scholarship applications open September 2025. If you're a high school senior living in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, or Massachusetts, your life has been touched by addiction, we want to help you pursue your educational goals. Share your journey in an essay at mountainside.com for a chance to be chosen. We can't wait to hear your story.
I liked what you said, Jess, and that is an approach I try to take with my son, is just the empathy and compassion part for all humans, right? Especially when we have people in our lives that are struggling, to be able to view it from a place of, warmth and concern and not judgment, so that hopefully he'll know that I wouldn't judge him. I've also tried to really talk more about like the mental health component of it when I'm like, he might not realize it's me trying to talk about substance use, right? But I try to normalize like us having mental health issues and going to therapy, going to couples counseling, just, someone needing to go into treatment so that he knows that people do this. It doesn't discriminate. Anyone might have to get a little help or take some Zoloft or, whatever the thing may be, so that ideally he'll be comfortable if he needs to come to me for some help.
Zoloft is a great introductory SSRI.
We love Zoloft.
Yeah, my system didn't, but it was my first.
My system loves it.
Yeah.
How do you find those little doors to have that conversation? I think that's a big one for me because like you find one and it's like perfect.
You just go in.
Sometimes like if I try to like create one, like driving in the car in a moment of silence, like, so want to talk about substance use and the dangers thereof? Like, how do you two like naturally fit that into a conversation?
I think more recently, it was often when friends or acquaintances were using, or, oh, this person had to go into therapy and take this antidepressant, and, also connecting that to, well, mommy takes these medications and this is why she takes them. And I had told her that early on because, kids are curious, like, why are you taking that every day? So when it's happening to someone else in her life is typically when I have those conversations.
Yeah. And asking those questions too. I guess. Like showing the curiosity and kind of like jump right in.
Yeah, I was going to say definitely like the openings with friends, but also before like, social outings, parties and stuff. And not to like, right as he's walking out the door, be like, make good choices.
Don't do drugs.
Don't do drugs. Which I have done, obviously. But, just have those conversations when, because they have like these massive sleepovers where 10 kids are going to be there. I can only imagine that, there might be some sort of substance there. If it's nicotine, marijuana, alcohol, something, I would imagine. So I try to use those ins, or even, family members, extended family members. There's lots of good examples all around us all the time where I can try to slide those conversations in when discussing a concern about someone else.
And I think that's the key. Like coming from a place of love and concern is sort of like the theme that at least I'm hearing. And I think that's actually what the pediatricians do too. It's not this like dare approach. It's here, let me inform you and educate you based on like because I love you and because I'm concerned, about your safety and well-being.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I had a friend who he was 20 and he overdosed and died, and that was his pediatrician said to his mom, like, we failed him. Which that always stuck with me because I thought that was interesting, like taking personal responsibility there, because there really are so many opportunities. And this was in 2018, so maybe it was less of a open dialogue then too. But there's so many opportunities.
Not as much Narcan.
Yeah. Not as much Narcan for sure. Yeah, now everybody has it.
Right.
Now everybody has it. It's everywhere. But yeah, at the time there wasn't as much. And now there are so many more programs to make sure it's everywhere. It's also OTC now. If you want Tums, you can also get Narcan. Right. Everybody should have it. Keep it in your house. You never know what kind of party it's going to be. And what supports would have been helpful to you guys, do you think? Like, is there any, obviously, I'm not a big believer that, like, one moment would have happened and I wouldn't have been a drug addict. Like, I think that train was on the tracks. But is there anything that might have been helpful for you guys?
Therapy.
I think real therapy. Not some bullshit, how does that make you feel therapy, but like a real therapist.
Yeah. For sure.
But that wasn't really easily accessible. It's still not easily accessible.
It's not, yeah.
And would I have gone?
Yeah.
Maybe
100%. It can only do so much, and I think sometimes as a teen having a therapist, I know this did this for me, where it just gave me the idea that later on down the road when I needed to do some serious work, I knew that I could have a secure attachment with a therapist, and that was like the value in it, even if at the time I was too reactive to do any of the actual work. What about you?
Usually for me, hindsight's 20/20, but I don't think so in this case. Because I went to like maybe a little bit more discipline. And I'm like, wait, no, actually maybe a little bit less discipline. Wait, maybe more sober friends. No, wait, I had those, but I was just drawn to this. So I don't know. I think things for me just kind of played out how they were supposed to play out. And it was a me thing and not a really, like, I think I had supports and I had everything there.
Yeah.
It was just, that's the path maybe I needed to go down to lead me to be in this circle today.
It's all been leading
I was actually going to
to
speak to that too. Yeah, like it is a part of our stories. That's how we are who we are now.
Right.
And how and why we do this work.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I do think looking back along the way, there were little seeds planted, and I can kind of pick out where I had these supports and maybe not necessarily the conversation, but how I felt along the way to where I knew what was safe. I knew the path I probably should go down. And eventually I found my way back there. And I think as parents, that's what we try to do. And even as, working in this field, how many times do people come back here and, don't stay sober long term, but they likely remembered us planting these little seeds every time.
That's so true.
Our touch point. So maybe we're just doing that with our children.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also we hear a lot like, my kids are going to keep me sober. They're not. They're not. I
It's
think
a lot of pressure.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. It's like, Mom, I'm 4. Like, what do you want me to do? But that's like a really common thing that I see here. I'm sure you all see it, where it's like I have to go home because I have to like parent, or I have to like show up for my kids in some way. And it's a lot of times like you're not ready to yet.
And that, I will say, was the catalyst, was my daughter. And I really need to get it together. I need to be a mom. But that was the beginning.
Right.
And then kind of finding myself and working in the field and going back to school. And so it became my journey. But she was the motivating factor.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah.
I think there's a gray area because we always say, like, you have to do it for yourself. You can't do it for anyone else. But when it comes to at least my children, like, doing it for them in a way is doing it for me too.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There's of course more work to be done. And I don't want to, place my sobriety on like,
right.
Them. But I think, that catalyst, get you moving in the direction of long-term recovery.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what we talk about too. When someone comes into at least because I work a program of Alcoholics Anonymous. So like when in the rooms, like someone comes in and they're doing it for a kid, it's like whatever you have to do to start out, like eventually, like I think that works getting you through like 24 hours at a time sometimes, but like you've got to find it internally at a certain point too, to be able to maintain long term.
Yep.
All right. Well, it has been so real, everybody. Thank you for being here. Does anybody have any closing remarks they want to throw out to the floor?
Sober is so in right now.
Sober is sexy.
Yes.
Isabel, we adore you.
We do.
We adore you.
This was wonderful.
I'll try to internalize that and not deflect. All right. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It's been so real, and I hope to talk to you more in depth at another time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Go team.
If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, Mountainside can help. Call 860-365-6764 to speak with our caring treatment team.